I work as a home inspector in Atlanta, Georgia. I have done more than 1,000 home and building inspections in my time as an inspector. Just for context, the oldest home in the state is located in Savannah, Georgia, about 3 to 4 hours from Atlanta. This house, which is called the Herb House, is claimed to have been built in the 1730s, which does have some skeptics as to when it was really built. I tell you this because, as a home inspector, I inspect all sorts of homes, old, new, decrepit, pristine, and pre-construction. Basically, if it is a home, I can and will inspect it. I work in Atlanta and Metro Atlanta areas for the most part, and the oldest home in Atlanta is the Joseph Willis House. It was built in 1840 and is still located at its original location. The oldest building I have inspected was a church, I don't remember where. It was built in the late 1800s. The home that this story is about was built in the early 1900s in Atlanta. If you're not familiar with crawlspaces beneath houses, then you are lucky. A crawlspace is an area under the house that is just dirt, used for things such as storage or placing the water heater or HVAC units. Depending on how well the owners take care of the crawlspace, there would be plastic covering the dirt and it would be clean. Most homeowners don't upkeep their crawlspaces. They are covered in spider webs, bugs everywhere, pools of water, and the wood flooring just covered in mold. This particular house that I was inspecting had been sitting empty for quite a while, and the crawlspace was full of discarded trash, a very old furnace or boiler, depending on where you're from. This crawlspace was also very low. I'm a big guy and it was tough to crawl around. Some crawlspaces you can stand up in, but most you will be crawling. I was talking to my clients and they were asking me to check specific things in the crawlspace. After they finished, I began to squeeze myself into the fairly small entrance. I am wearing my headlamp, a mask to keep my breathing clean, and what I call a crawlspace suit, which is just like a mechanic's jumpsuit. About 6 minutes of crawling around and taking photos and avoiding pools of water, my headlamp goes out. One of the fears I have while crawling around under these old houses is that the house will shift and pin me under it and I will be trapped. So when my light went out, it was complete dark and in my mind I was anticipating the home crushing me. I tried rapidly to get my light back on. Stupid thing was constantly doing this at the wrong moments. Over my time doing inspections, I have found a lot of things in weird places: old soda cans, old shoes, clothing, signs. Most of it is pretty cool, and sometimes people will let me have things. Once I found a cavity in a wall that was only accessible through the attic that was near impossible to navigate, and in this cavity was a giant safe. It was open and I guessed it was empty. I jumped down about 5 feet and took some photos. It was completely empty but very old. There was nothing cool or interesting in this particular house that I was slowly and carefully crawling under, or so I thought. My light finally came back on, and there in front of me, washed in my beam of light, was a very old-looking stone well. I could have sworn that was not there before. This was a small house, and usually the size of the house directly reflects the size of the crawlspace. I could see the entire crawlspace from any area. It was surprising that I missed this. I consider myself an explorer, and before I could take a photo of the well, I heard a voice. It said, "Help me." It was very ghostly and faint, and the person sounded very tired. I thought I was just hearing things when I heard, "Help me, I'm in the well. Please." I began rapidly crawling towards the well. The area around the well has enough clearance for me to stand on my knees. I glance over the edge of the well while balancing myself with my hands on the cold, damp stone wall of the well. My light shines down the well that has about 15 feet deep and only 1 foot of water in there. Sitting at the bottom of this well is a dark-haired boy in what looks like old-timey pajamas, clutching a soaking wet stuffed animal. I couldn't tell what kind of animal it was. It looked so deteriorated. I gasped and said, "How'd you get down there?" All he replied was, "Help me, please." I yelled that I will be right back. I threw Jim my headlamp and used my inspection phone for light to crawl out of there. When I finally squeezed out of the small entrance, the client saw me and chuckled at my filthy appearance and asked me how it looked under there. I yelled at them to call 911. There is a boy in the well under there. They understandably looked confused, as they had no idea there was a well under their house. They began to dial, and I ran to my work truck to get my rope. I always have rope with ever since I saw that movie, Boondock Saints, and one of the guys says that you can never have too much rope. I grabbed my length of rope and my extra headlight and ran back to the entrance of the crawlspace and dove inside the small opening. I was crawling as fast as I could while floor joists kept smashing into my back, reminding me that they don't care what's going on, they are moving. I can hear sirens in the distance. Hopefully heading to us. As I said, wherever you are in this crawlspace you can see every area, but what I didn't realize is that all my aggressive crawling has kicked up so much dirt in the space that I cannot even see a foot in front of me. I cannot see where the well is. I call out, "Hey! Where are you?" "Hello." Just then, a very bright light pierces the dust and darkness. Someone calls out, "Fire department, coming in." 3 firefighters crawl over to me with all sort of rescue equipment, asking me where the boy is. I tell them he's in the well. Now 4 people are kicking up dust. We start making careful movements so that the dust can settle. Once it's settled enough, we all frantically looked for the well. We could see every area in this crawlspace and there was no well. There was no space that you could stand on your knees. There was nothing. I was completely confused. The 4 of us did some thorough investigating of that crawlspace before crawling out and finding nothing. I was adamant about seeing that well and that boy asking for help. I could remember vividly the feel of the cold, damp stone well wall. I could not explain anything. I couldn't answer any of their questions. The police informed me that I need to be sure of something before I call 911. It was so strange. This was my first paranormal experience, and now I know how others feel and what the true definition of eerie is. Now, every time I enter into a building for an inspection, I apologize to anything that may be there for invading their space, but I will leave shortly. I haven't seen anything since that day, and I hope whoever that was at the bottom of that well finds peace. Maybe all he wanted was my head lamp. I never found it after I tossed it down to him.